I'm Chris, and I'm just doing another video on the importance of vulnerability in leadership skills. These add on to my previous videos about transactional leadership and transformational leadership styles and trust. We're just today going to discuss the importance of vulnerability when in leadership positions. So the first thing I want you to have a little think about is leaders that you've worked with and some of the best leaders that you've worked with. So what made you trust them? What made you, was it their honesty? Was it their openness? Was it their willingness to learn or their ability to make mistakes? So if you thought of the ideal leaders that you worked with, what sort of behaviors, what characteristics did they have for them to be great leaders? So have a little think for about a minute or so and try and picture or vision the best leaders that you've worked with. So most of the trusted leaders are authentic and human. They're not perfect. So some people think that personally they need to be perfect. They need to not show vulnerability in order to be the best leaders. But actually, most people, when they think of the best leaders they worked with, they're authentic. They're human. They make mistakes. They're happy to share those mistakes, and that's what makes them great leaders. But interesting, when we reflect ourselves, we think there's a lot of people who think that leadership is about having all the answers and be not having uncertainty and almost being a bit robotic and not having emotions. Well, actually, when people think of the best leaders they've worked with, they're normally authentic and human. So, what is vulnerability? So, vulnerability in leadership is not a weakness. It's a willingness to be open, to admit uncertainty, to ask for help, to acknowledge mistakes, and to invite others' perspectives in. So this traditional view of leadership can sometimes be that leaders are expected to have all the answers, to show no uncertainty, to be emotionally distant, and to remain authority at all the time. So if someone comes to you with problems, the idea is as a leader, you're meant to have all these answers. And if you don't have these answers, or you say that you don't know things, or maybe you get upset, then actually that shows that you're not a good weakness, and you're not a good leader. But actually, a lot of it shows that that's not right. And actually, as we go through this presentation, we'll explain that in a little bit more detail. The traditional leadership styles often tend to reduce psychological safety. So people think that they can't experiment, try new things, they can't make mistakes, and they can't, they have to have all these answers. And normally it means that they hide mistakes and they're not willing to try and learn. And there's this kind of blame culture that we'll discuss in more detail. So yeah, this approach will create silence, so people not wanting to talk, hiding mistakes, as I just said, or this sort of general fear of speaking up, feeling that you can't try and challenge the ways things are. It's just the leader said this is how it's going to work. This is how this will work. So people can't highlight mistakes or highlight things that aren't working for them. So what's the link between vulnerability and trust? So trust grows when leaders are honest, they're transparent, they're open to feedback, and they're willingness to meet mistakes. And actually, what you'll find is these vulnerable leaders are more likely to ask questions. They'll ask more questions and they'll tell people what to do. So when leaders show vulnerability, they show their human side, they show that they'll make mistakes, that that they're human, that they want feedback, so they know that they need to improve as people as well. The teams tend to be more honest, and teams are willing to try new things, experiment, and they're also willing to admit when they've done something wrong, in order for people to learn. So yeah, trust isn't built through hierarchy; it's built through human connection. It's really important that this human general connection is what builds trust and what builds psychological safety. So vulnerability and psychological safety. So psychological safety is I can speak without fear, embarrassment, punishment, or humiliation. And leaders shape this through their behaviors. So that's leaders admitting mistakes, asking questions, and encouraging dialogue, encouraging their teams to be able to speak, giving their input, share ideas, try new things. And this is how psychological safety increases. And yeah, this builds speak up cultures, speak up and learning cultures. And as I said before, vulnerability is really important for the leaders and the power of saying, I don't know. So, three powerful leadership phrases. It's really important that leaders ask questions. So, the power of I don't know. What do you think? Are admitting mistakes, so I've made a mistake, and highlighting when people bring in their ideas and making sure they're rewarded. So sharing that that's a good point, and even sharing that with your team to highlight that actually you want people to bring their ideas. You as the leader aren't the only one who brings ideas to the table. Everyone has an input, and actually, no matter people's position, someone might have a really, really good idea that you welcome those. So these phrases will invite collaboration, show humility, and build trust. The leaders who ask questions create thinking teams. So if you all the answers come from you and you don't ask questions, you just tell people what to do, you're going to create a yes team where they'll just do what they say, and the leaders will quickly become the bottleneck. So the teams won't be able to work without the leaders. Or actually, if the leaders they're asking questions, they're coaching, they're supervising, they're then creating teams who can work on their own. And the leaders no longer become a bottleneck. They become a catalyst. So when the leader's input, people can develop more and move faster. But the leader isn't needed for them to do things to experiment. They're there as an enabler to help them develop quicker. The learning blame culture. So in a blame culture, mistakes are hidden. So if the information just comes one way and the leader basically says that this is the way we do it, and if we do it this way, everything will be fine. But then mistakes happen, people are going to hide those mistakes. But in learning cultures, mistakes are explored. So if the leader is able to show that they've made mistakes and things aren't going as they hoped, then their team will copy that, and then they'll share their mistakes. And then as written there, the leader's behavior determines the culture that develops. So if leaders are vulnerable, if they're sharing that the humans, they're sharing that they're making mistakes, then their team will copy that, and their teams will share mistakes, try and experiment, try new things, and try new things of working. And especially if the leaders are asking for input, asking how we can change things, letting people experiment, letting people fail, then those things will then that's the culture that will be developed, a learning culture rather than a blame culture. So vulnerability allows organizations to learn faster. So organizations can share their mistakes, can experiment more, and there's a good saying that teams that fail faster learn faster. So you fail, and then you learn from that. So vulnerability allows organizations to share mistakes, experiment on how they can improve them, and then learn from those mistakes. And that allows organizations to learn faster. Vulnerability builds stronger teams. So when teams show vulnerability, there's greater trust, better communication, more collaboration, and stronger relationships. People connect with people, not positions. So being vulnerable, having these discussions, sharing mistakes, having these authentic human connections, it's what builds great teams rather than these positions. Especially if it's hierarchical, it can be more challenging in a transactional leadership model where it's I'm the leader, you need to do what I say. When actually, if there's everyone, it's less hierarchical. There still would be hierarchy, but there's less hierarchical. Everyone's input is valued, and that will build more human connection. The common leadership fears. So many leaders worry that if I show vulnerability, I'll lose my authority. But research and experience shows the opposite. So leaders gain respect, they gain trust, and they gain loyalty. This human connection is really, really important for building that. So confidence and vulnerability can coexist. So you can still be confident, but show vulnerability. So practical ways that leaders can show vulnerability. So just simple behaviors is ask for feedback. So ask people how they feel your leadership is going. Is there anything that you can improve on? Is yeah, and lots of organizations do the 360 feedback where you give feedback to people teams that you work with, but they also give you feedback. So asking for feedback, asking what you can improve on, explaining that you're still learning, you're still developing as a leader, you want that feedback in order for you to learn. Admit when you don't know something. So if you're unsure, just admit that you don't know it. So it is really vital that when you're showing vulnerability, you're not just showing that I don't know and there's no way out of this. You're just saying that I don't know how this looks at the moment, but I know we can find out the way. So having that small line at the end to show that you don't know how it is at the moment, but you're confident that we'll get there as a team, that's important. So there is a slight difference between just hopeless vulnerability where you just I don't know, it's hopeless, nothing's going to work out. When actually, I'm not sure how this is going to work, but maybe we can try this. Or have you got any ideas on what might work? I know we can get through this as a team, but I just don't know how this looks right now. Yeah, lessons you learn from mistakes. So times you made mistakes, but learn from them. Maybe some experiments that you've run is a good example of sharing. Actually, sharing mistakes, but sharing how you got through those mistakes and sharing how you learned. Invite different perspectives. So this collaboration is really important. Inviting people from different areas, different expertise to come and have a look at your problems. Um, and yeah, not getting defensive can be really hard for some leaders, but actually being able to invite feedback, listen to that, and actually thanking people for bringing feedback, even if that feedback's quite hard, it's really important that you invite that feedback in and listen without getting defensive. Because if you start getting defensive, then people just aren't going to feed that back to you. And every time people give you feedback, that's a gift, that's a chance for you to learn, chance for you to develop as a leader. And obviously, if as us as leaders are developing, then that's only going to improve our teams. So the ripple effect of leadership. So leadership behavior spreads. So it starts with leaders, then it can go to managers, then to teams, and then that's what changes the culture. Vulnerability can shape an environment where people feel safe to speak up, to learn, to challenge ideas, and to support each other. It all starts with the leaders being vulnerable. They're in the senior position. People are more likely to mirror their behaviors. So they're showing vulnerability. They're saying that they don't know. They're saying things can be quite challenging sometimes. If they're asking people's ideas and asking people to think, asking good questions, then that's more likely to develop into the teams and cultures. Yeah, as I said, culture starts with the leadership behavior. So reflection. So as a leader, just have a little think about, do people feel safe to challenge you? Do you admit mistakes openly to your team? And do you ask more questions and give answers? And if you don't, maybe just try and ask some more questions, maybe admit some more mistakes, and maybe ask people, no one's challenged you for a while. Is there a reason? What small thing, what small difference could you make as a leader? Or what are we missing? What could we try and experiment with? So in summary, the strongest leaders are those